At the end of the day, it's all about users, customers, and revenue. Triple your growth and turn your company into a sales machine, no matter the crisis. Learn how to create successful marketing and sales strategies on and offline. And learn the latest trends, hacks, tips, and tricks in the world of KPIs and metrics, covered in this program block. Expect hard facts, first-hand advice, and nothing but the latest techniques.
Welcome back, everybody. My name is Stoyan, and I'm your host in Studio 3 of Podim DX conference. And I'm excited to announce the next session. It's actually one of the few sessions from the section of Growth Academy. And I would like to have us introduce our next speaker. So let's see who's going to be coming right now. Katarzyna, how are you today?
Good, thank you. Welcome and good morning.
Good morning. You are part of a company that everybody loves. Everybody is using every single day. How is it to be part of Facebook and to be actually taking care of the emerging markets?
Well, definitely exciting. And, it gives me the possibility of being here, for example. So that's definitely exciting opportunity on the daily basis, especially since the pandemic hit.
Beautiful. For the audience who's tuning in right now, would you just introduce yourself shortly and give us a perspective about who you are, what's your background, and what brought you to this position?
Sure. So my name is Katarzyna Paliwoda. So actually, I managed to change the name since we've been organizing this one as the events. And I'm responsible business-wise for, approximately, let's say, between 12 to 15 countries, so-called emerging countries of the Central and Eastern Europe region. I'm Polish. I'm based in Warsaw, that I have a huge passion for. So, I'm always inviting everyone to visit. And as a background, I'm coming actually from the CPG environment. So I used to be part of the P&G before, and I spent over a decade there doing, various of, I think, more than 10 different jobs, both for Poland, but also for Central Europe and the EMEA region. And on the passion side, I'm the mom of this little gentleman here that you will be able to see on the slide in a very minute. So I'm the mom of 2-year-old Bruno. And then I also do loads of consulting around, social good and NGOs. And that's definitely my career aspiration looking further.
I'm very curious to hear how is it all going with the working from home, having a kid home, but that's a topic for another conversation, I think. And without any further ado, I'm very excited to listen to your session because it's about unlocking your international growth with smart Facebook strategy. There's a lot of people that are posting organic content on Facebook or trying to do things with ads and so on and so forth, but it will be very interesting to see some inside look into some strategies, into some ideas on how to actually maximize our time on Facebook. So super excited, Katarzyna. The stage is yours. Lead us through your presentation.
Thank you so much. So let me just know if you see my screen already, just to confirm.
Yes.
Amazing. So yeah, that's the little gentleman I was talking about on the very right. Not to miss that slide, that's the most important. So guys, let me start from the story. And let me start from, introducing you to Walter Arnold. Walter Arnold wasn't really known at his time, but what he's known right now for is that he's the one who received the first speeding ticket. And he was driving 8 miles per hour in 2 miles per hour zone. And if you think about it, and if I compare it to the number of my speeding tickets, but also the 100 times more of the speed I was taking, I like the story because it somehow indicates the human desire for speed and the human desire kind of to accelerate things whenever it's possible. And I think, last year has proven that. And, I will not talk much about COVID per se. I will try to give you some tips and, advices on how to leverage it for your business. But guys, we achieved in 2 months what we actually been doing for the last 10 years. And, from that perspective, the 10 years of the digital transformation happened overnight, literally. And even the companies like Facebook or any tech had actually problems on adjusting on how much that change was for all of us. And, from the e-com perspective, that's definitely where, the e-com has grew exponentially. And, we've seen it all across the businesses, but especially digital natives, and especially the ones that are somehow coming or sourcing from, the virtual reality or from the internet as such. So it hasn't been the first time it happens. And, from that perspective, I think it's worth reminding us that, we've been through loads of changes before. And if you think about the e-commerce as a word, and, I'll talk a lot around cross-border today, but if you think about the e-commerce, so like eventually where's it all coming from? It has 50 years old. And I'm not sure if you know, but the word itself, e-commerce, is actually coming from electronic commerce, where actually 50 years ago, for the first time ever, someone has selling something over TV. And then, since then, obviously, loads of things have happened. But I think what is interesting is that historically, all the crises that we went through as a humankind was slowing down the cross-border business, given that we simply didn't have the solutions to how to overcome it. And this one is the first one ever that we could actually accelerate, or to some extent and make the cross-border and make that pandemic in some instances to our advantage. I'm obviously not talking all the businesses, but when there were loads of the businesses that has taken the advantage of everything going on in the world in the last year. And, from that perspective, we've seen loads of the usage, loads of the cases where actually the businesses have been able to set up very successful cross borders, so kind of pan-country or international strategies on our platforms. Just to name a few, we probably all know and love Happy Socks. So again, Swedish by origin, but right now present in more than 90 countries. We probably less of us know Lingotis, which is again expanded towards over 20 million families across the globe. And I myself very recently actually became a fan of Charlotte Tilbury. They won the 2020 contest of the best makeup powder, so that's actually the one I'm using. And again, the company that without a huge investment has actually expanded towards over 75 countries. Now, what do that companies has in common? And eventually, what is triggering their success looking further? So definitely what we observed from our standpoint is how much today's consumers, and by the way, we talk to the same people. So if I think about the Facebook consumers and our users per se, that's eventually also your consumers or your product, your brands, your businesses. They definitely value the most the personalized experiences. And again, we are very demanding across dimensions, but personalization has been a theme, for some time. And by the way, as a background, I'm a marketer. So I'll, use loads of marketing or traditional marketing examples here as well, because I think no matter whether we talk digital native business, no matter whether we talk e-commerce app, like eventually the paradigms hasn't changed. I think the tools has changed, which caused loads of the solutions and loads of further on steps to change as well. So if we look at what's important for the consumers these days, apart from the personalization, it's actually all around 4 dimensions. So on one side, what's definitely proven is that loads of the discovery of the products or the new brands or the new services actually happening online. It's actually happening in social media while scrolling through things like Facebook or Instagram. On the other side, as I've talked already, personalization became a thing. But also from that perspective, as talked, the consumers became more and more demanding. And it's all around, immediacy. So if something doesn't work, I will drop out. I don't have time to waste. And I might not come back. And, there has been estimates on how much it's actually worth globally. But it's also around, safety and security. So how much I feel confident that whatever I've ordered will be delivered on time. I'll be able to, track my package, etc., etc. That's all to some extent with, it's these 4 key pillars of the consumer expectations these days. And what we started observing at Facebook, and what we actually started naming it per se, is, in the past, we used to search for products. I used to realize, okay, like my little son needs new jeans, and then I was simply searching for it, or just entering H&M or Zara or some local brand and just ordering them. But then eventually loads of the products, loads of the brands, loads of services right now are obviously found online. And some of you might say that this is creating the needs, which as an ex-marketer, I would strongly disagree with, because you cannot create the need. The need has to be there. You're just addressing the needs, and I might not be aware of the product addressing my needs, but the first paradigm of me having that need needs to be there. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. So again, products are right now finding people addressing their needs. And to that standpoint, we went through the pretty long journey on, how this could work. And, definitely right now, what we are all aware of is, you can definitely create a personalized and relevant advertising. So if you're a shoemaker or, or a shoe producer, definitely you can talk to the different target groups, and then using very, very relevant and very personalized messaging. Now, as Facebook, we also went through actually pretty long journey here. And, from that perspective, the commerce as such has very much evolved on our platforms. And if you think about how we are looking into our products, how we develop the new solutions, that we simply observe what our people are doing, what people on our platforms are doing. So at first, we've observed that there's more and more people who are simply trading or exchanging things online in the groups. And then that's actually triggered us to create the marketplace. We also observed that, the most popular question on Instagram is, where have you bought it? What is this brand? Where do you have this jacket from? No matter whether you're an influencer or just a normal user. So again, we created the tags. And then we also observed that there's more and more commerce happening throughout the live videos. And, I have my, very local example here, because, just downstairs, I live in the very center of Warsaw. There's a very trendy store that has so much of the demand, but very limited supply. And what they do, especially right now, especially in the last year, is that we organize live videos to just buy it instantly, so that we give the fair chances to everyone buying it straight away as the first ones. If you think what comes next from that standpoint, it's, definitely we've launched shops, and it's not yet available for everyone and across the globe, but it's coming. And, our idea is to simply make it relevant and make it user friendly for everyone using any of our platforms. But then if you think about what's coming next, that's, definitely, how you can drive further consideration in, seamless integration of the messaging. And, I think last year I was doing a speech around teenagers, and there's been one research that was actually comparing sending an email by a teenager for us to go into a post. And that's, definitely something that, especially in the current world, and especially in the younger generation, email per se is so much outdated as a tool that they would love to have the seamless integration wherever they're buying that product from. And the same with the payment. We're working on the Facebook Pay to again ensure that the experience from our users, it's simply seamless. But then, if you think about the cross-border, and I'm supposed to talk cross-border today, and there's all the tools coming from Facebook, but then the question is, you guys as a business owners, as entrepreneurs, why should you care about the cross-border? And again, we are here almost here in Slovenia, and then, there are very different reasons for you to expand beyond the certain country or beyond the center, the exact region. I'm always using the story of actually my best friend, literally my best friend, who is a music manager. And whenever she's interviewed, she's actually the music manager of one of the top, Polish artists. Whenever she is asked why the Polish artists are not known abroad, she's always saying, you know what? Because Poland is big enough. Because in Poland, you can actually you can actually leave from Poland. You can have enough concerts. You can have, enough of the publicity that you can survive. You don't have that, intent. What I observe, especially in the CE region, and by the way, CE formally covers 40 countries, including Russia, Poland, whole Balkans, and so on, is that the smaller the country, the more entrepreneurial it is. And then it has the bigger of the cross-border and the export focus, because all the startups that are simply launching the smaller countries have that global mindset already in place, which is not the case in Poland, which is definitely not the case in Russia, and which is not the case in many other regions. So on one hand, that this is it. On the other hand, there might be anything from, the list you can see right now. Definitely in the times of pandemics, it's also all around business risk diversification. And we've seen so many of our partners that have been simply expanding just because of the COVID or just because of the pandemic. So to some extent, even following lockdowns in some cases, so that eventually they can serve the consumers in the given country, especially as the traditional retail stores will be closed. And what we observe is that the businesses who have done it right, they actually focus on 3 pillars. It's all around agile targeting, localized marketing, and seamless buying experience. And let me walk you briefly on what actually does it mean. So when it comes to the agile targeting, we've actually done the research on what is important for people when buying product from outside of their home country. And the top 4 scores were all around availability, so that it's there and it's not there, or I like it more. It's about price, discovery. So like I've discovered a new yoga mat that has so lovely design that I would rather ship it from Slovenia or US rather than buy it here locally, and the quality. And yes, there are some differences when it comes to the percentages in the given markets, but overall it sums up around these figures. And yes, there are also some categories that would be different. So if you think about, I'm always using that, from my previous life, I'm always using the laundry detergent example. So Polish people still believe that the laundry detergents in Germany are better, and hence they would rather buy it from abroad, given that they believe the quality is actually the most important. Once we've done this research, we've also discovered that the countries like India has definitely far more of the quality focus. So in their case, over 60, the number for India around quality would be over 60%. That would be definitely number 1. Why? Because still the India citizens believe that whatever produced outside India is simply of a better quality. So that would be their motivation. And, from that perspective, what you can use, and, especially if you've ever done any of the, more advanced advertising with Facebook, you probably know that tool that you can simply match whoever is the fan of your product. It might be CRM, it might be someone who bought it online, it might be someone who installed your app. And what we can do is that we can simply match this data and find the most similar people of those using your products or brands already in any given country. So to some extent, the expansion wouldn't be as expensive as the old times where we needed to buy a huge marketing campaign, or that targeting would be so difficult, because whatever niche product you are selling, we can actually find you the most similar people to the ones that have already bought it in your country abroad. And then there are 2 strategies around it. You can actually give us eventually you can allow machine to decide for you that if you want to go for these 5 countries, we'll find simply the cheapest people. The cheapest sounds bad, but the ones that are the most cost optimal for you when it comes to reaching. And you wouldn't care about the split of the Czech versus Slovenia versus Poland or versus US. Or you can simply do it within the countries. So you can do it within Czech, within Poland, allocating the budget to the given country, depending on what's your ROI and what's your business model as well. And the second one is all around localized marketing. And here, let me use the COVID case, because I think that's, if the public institutions are doing it, I think businesses, or especially just the young ones and the startups, should do it even more. So what we observe is that definitely the more local advertising, the better. So even if you target the whatever the English-speaking country, like in this case. But actually, both the Washington State and the city of Toronto did is that they've been targeting the COVID communication in the local languages, so that people can actually believe it more, and it's actually proven that it's more trustworthy whenever you communicate in someone's local language, regardless where they live. And here's the business case on the same. Yeah. So what the TransferWise did is that they simply translated both their website and all their ads into 9 languages. And that move on its own actually allowed them to decrease the price almost 3 times versus what they've been doing before. So again, localizing your content definitely works. And something that I will talk more in the next section is around, creatives. Creatives where I'm, ex-marketeer, so to some extent, probably that's one of the reasons why I was so passionate about dedicating the second part of that speech into the creativity, DR creativity and digital native creativity. But if you think about it, in the old world, you would just, have one benefit that you would communicate at once, or maximum 2. Right now, remembering my shoe example, you can definitely target different consumers by different benefits of your products, making it simply far more cost efficient for you, and making it and expanding your possible reach or possible target group. And to do that, you can also, use our products. So, what we offer right now is that we are able to translate and kind of manage the dynamic language optimization, regardless where someone is. Or you can also include the local information, like, local currency or local shipment cost towards the ad itself already straight away. So again, these are the 3 pillars. And then the last one, I've almost forgotten about the last one, is about seamless buying experience. And this is something that goes to some extent outside us, but we care. We care because our consumers, our users care about and assess also us on how good products we are able to buy via our platforms. And, to that extent, I'm sharing here the PDPL example where they actually made a massive effort into ensuring that their buying experience is better, into creating, introducing more currencies, introducing alternative payment methods, and so on. And again, that definitely worked out for them. From our perspective, as Facebook, again, we did the research on, what's the most important if you're buying online, and definitely the frictionless of experience is a top one. And these were, the 6 factors you can see on the right are the top ones. And then, at the very top, you have delivery tracking, reasonable shopping time. Just imagine that you've ordered something, clicked the ad on Facebook or Instagram, you've ordered something, and then you wait 4 weeks without any notification for that. So you're worried where it's coming or not, especially if it comes from other countries. So especially if it comes from not the well-known brand, but someone you just discovered. So this is also the reason why we as a company, as a Facebook, care about that experience. And that's why we also started rewarding, and then the opposite, the advertisers who are delivering that positive or negative experience towards our users and our consumers. So from that perspective, what might happen is that if you don't deliver up to your promise, or if you fail on the communication in the process, this will actually impact your further ad delivery, as we'll be eventually asking your buyers the questions how much they like the experience, and whether they would recommend it further on or not. And that's, I had a very personal example on this one. So I, very recently, ordered something that was like, actually that was a yoga mat I used before. That's a true story. So I ordered a yoga mat. And it actually delivered, it's been delivered only 5 weeks after the purchase, but on a very, very way, I was receiving the communication around it, and it was actually triggering to positive, saying, we wanted to save your money. We didn't want to increase your cost. That's why we're producing in country X, and that's why it will actually take us a bit longer to deliver it to you. Just please patient, etc. It was actually ongoingly, so that I could feel secure And, to some extent, I made myself more patient around the delivery coming. And these are these three. Yeah. So from that perspective, these are the three to remember if you think about cross-border. So these are like a brilliant basics, if I would call it this way. And then there's one segment into it that I want to actually go deeper right now into, which are creatives, and how much of the creative journey you can go, whatever your product and whatever your business is. And if you think, especially, as I was briefed, the majority of you are simply digital native businesses, or the entrepreneurs, all the startups. So, from that perspective, if you think about the traditional DR business, but even if you think about actually any type of business or any type of brand, historically, what is happening once you kind of launch, once you enter the market, once you launch the product, is like a typical formula of, having a product, whatever that product is, having some sort of price or benefit, and then the call to action, like, buy now, shop now, etc. That's eventually where you're starting from. Yeah. And I know it's very simplistic, but that's eventually, each brand, no matter how big, it's actually starting from some message. What happens then later on is, it obviously attracts, consumers, and attracts some certain consumers, and it's definitely effective for some time, but it will wear out from, all the obvious reasons. It will wear out. And then, at the certain point, simply your business will slow down, because you came to the point that you're not willing to pay more to reach extra consumers behind that creative, or behind, or selling yet another product, or selling yet another app install. So then the question is, what to do next? And then, from that perspective, that's what I started talking about. So if you target simply in using this example, all the soda lovers, you'll target them, you'll reach them, and you'll reach them effectively. Probably they will become more and more expensive. So at some point you'll say, okay, that's enough. Like, I cannot afford more. But then you have all around people that also love soda, but not to the extent that we would actually trigger but that first communication. And then the question is how you reach those. So how you actually expand your targeting, and how you go into, people who, love only this one flavor and are worried about, they don't want to get more, or that, they feel like, okay, what for to order soda online? That's so nonsense. I have like a grocery store downstairs, like why to bother, etc., etc. So this is like eventually where it's coming from. Yeah. So if you consider what, motivates different audiences, you can actually came up with a different creatives, again, on the same brand equity, on the same brand character, but then using different benefits depending on who you talk to. So if your barrier is all around flavors, and that there won't be any flavor for me, you can definitely focus on how many flavors you offer. If it's all around why to buy soda online, I can actually go downstairs into the grocery, you can actually underline the free shipping benefit. And then if it's all around natural ingredients or anything else, or product characteristics, you can simply bet on this one. And we actually done the research around how much of that approach could actually benefit, and how much of your business could benefit. And it's actually we did literally last year we did the 28 pilot cases on this one, and we discovered that this approach specifically actually converted to different audiences approximately almost 90% of the time. And that's why we believe that that approach makes sense to look into, no matter on what stage of your development you're at. And then the question is how to do it. So let me start from yet another example of Upright. So Upright is this device that you put at the back to straighten up. Whenever I'm talking about it, I feel like I should straighten up. And the typical target group were women, with some sort of a desk job, approximately 18 to 34. And then at some point, they started exhausting that audience. So there wasn't, the next people were too expensive, or they weren't so receptive. So then the question is, what comes next? And they figure out that one of other motivators to actually use that device might be yoga practitioners. Why? because that can actually improve improve your posture while practicing yoga. And just by doing that, and by going deeper into that segment, we could actually effectively reach the new audiences and increase their ROI. But then what next? So you have that yoga, and then again you go deeper, yeah. So from that perspective, if you can target anyone and you can have as many creatives as possible, then let's play with it as well. So we actually split their marketing and their strategy around the yoga reiteration to different audiences. So the ones who would be natural lovers, to the men, to the women separately, etc., so that's even more effective versus yoga on its own. And again, they figure out that it actually worked even more, and that their cost has per simply ROI has improved. So worth expanding further. So to some extent, what I would kind of encourage you to do here is to flip that traditional order of insight, target, and creative to actually creative first. So if you think about experimenting with that one, which actually such tools like Facebook allows you to do, the question is what to do and how to do it from that perspective. And there will be 3 parts of the story. The first one is around what are the motivators for your brand or businesses, and consequently barriers. How to use them, the broad audiences. So again, it's not about super narrow targeting. It's actually around broader targeting, and then experimenting as the last one. So let's have a look on the motivators. We all as a people have a different reasons to buy something, and that's actually this idea is basing on that and leveraging this one for your benefit, for your business benefit. So, from that perspective, we know, and that's, something, else to just to prove my point is that, especially in the age of mobile, so, of those devices, this, relevance and actually targeted ads are more preferred by people. And that's, again, it's our consumers as Facebook. So we also care about them, being more satisfied with actually a usage of our platform. So the question is, how to uncover those motivators for your businesses, and that starts from the brainstorm. So that starts from the brainstorm of simply listing all the barriers, all the motivators that you might have for your business. And if you want to do that, you can simply choose top 3 or 4 ones that you want to bet on, that you believe are actually the ones that worth checking out and worth discovering more. And if you go deeper into that channel, and I will use right now the for all use case, which is actually the fashion e-com example, is you might figure out that eventually there are top 4 motivators / barriers you want to expand. So the first one is, I find the way I am and I don't need anything new. So, I like my clothes, I'm fine. So then, from that perspective, the benefit would be the for all has something for everyone, even for you, and maybe you would be interested. The benefit messaging, refresh your wardrobe with thousands of styles from hundreds of brands. Shop now. And the theme selection is mix it up. I will show you the creatives later on. The next one, I love the latest trends in fast fashion. For all, this has latest trends from the top designers, new arrivals, shop now, and then the theme, new arrivals every day. And consequently, seems too expensive and high brand. For all, this is price points, handbags under 100, shop now, and then the theme and the concept is handbags under 100. And that's how it looked like. Too fast. Okay, so the concept 1, I'm fine the way I am. I don't need anything new. I love the latest trends. And then, it seems too expensive. If you look at that, all that 3 creatives and all that 3 concepts, it's still the same brand. And that's very important. Yeah. So you can definitely explore a different creatives, but it's definitely very important. And what ruins my heart, especially if I look at some of the e-commerce or GR businesses, is that you are building a brand. So from that perspective, it actually matters on how you communicate as well visually, and whether you sell the same brand story throughout of underlining one or second benefits. So this is the network. So this is the framework eventually. So again, you start brainstorming from motivators, barriers, and then you try to put it this way, and then eventually create a concept to then test as well. Yeah, we'll go to the testing in a second. What is important here is also the fact that, you might have a benefit, a single benefit that might be either shown visually, so like more on the product or on the kind of tech side, or emotionally. That would be still the same benefits. Yeah. And, by the way, the last business I've managed before joining Facebook was Gillette for Central Europe. So it's not Gillette, but it's actually very close to my heart. So if you think about the razors, etc., you can definitely, you can definitely communicate the product itself. So to some extent, why do I need it? You can communicate product, meaning like a high tech, how many blades it has. There are so many memes around. When do we have like a 15 blades or so? But you can also create the last one, which is the emotional benefit. So, for razors as a category, one of the greatest insights is that if you're in the new relationship, especially new, or if you have a young child, that's eventually where triggers the need of you shaving very closely, so that you don't hurt or don't feel harsh for someone you love or for someone you care about. So again, it's the same benefit, but different motivators to use, hence different creatives. And then something I already mentioned, but let me underline it even more here, is to what extent the creative should be different. So what we've tested out is they should be different. So it's not about the background color change. It's not about the font size change. You can obviously test it, but if you bet on some on one or two creatives, that's definitely from that perspective they should be different. Especially as sometimes one person can actually see both, but then it also needs to convey the same brand story throughout that. And in the old days, what I used to do when I was actually starting my career is we were actually printing out the creatives, and then in that times it was outdoor print or storyboards or the TV commercials, and we were putting it on one huge board and checking whether it's still the same story, whether it's actually screams the same brand, and if it's not, we actually did something wrong. Yeah, that's eventually how you should also approach it here. And then what we also observed from all of our partners is that if you think about the businesses that are the fastest growing all across, is that they are using 11 times more creative assets versus the one that doesn't. So in average, it's 45 creatives versus 4. And they're also the ones who are usually having the biggest difference between the top and the lowest performing ads. And that's, I think, this is also, the not being afraid for experimenting is definitely something, extremely important, because you will fail sometimes once you will be, going through that, different motivators or barriers. But then you might also create a new benchmark. So you might came up with a better creatives versus the one that you've been using as on the business as usual mode. Yeah, that's eventually what I mentioned. And then, there's another aspect of how this should all work here, because don't forget that the majority of your impressions or, the people who see your ads on the mobile devices, not desktop or anywhere else. And to some extent, we're still forgetting that it's mobile, not desktop. So to some extent, we're still approving very often our creatives, even on, using laptop rather than actually, showing, literally opening that email on the mobile device. Because loads of the things that we forget is simply would be so much straightforward if you would see it here. It's the same as in the old days. We used to, have this fake profiles where you were putting your outdoor, trying to see it in the landscape, so that you see that, maybe that, third message on that outdoor is not the one that you should go for, or maybe you should actually go for the logo being bigger. So we have actually 5, basic rules around it. It's all around, capturing attention quickly. So again, I'm scrolling using my thumb. I'm cutting off for the video, yeah. So I'm trying to, So I'm scrolling using my thumb, and from that perspective, it's all around thumb stopping power. So you want my thumb to stop, and the question is to what extent, and whether you will draw my attention. And because of that, by the way, we always talk about the video, because if you think about it, you don't pay more for video. So it's like, for us, it doesn't make any difference whether you put the static picture or the video, but for you, it does, because the video, so whatever moves, is catching attention more quickly and catching attention more effectively. So that's why, from that perspective, we always talk about the reinventing the video. It's about the length, so whether you are able to convey your message in the first 2 or 3 seconds. And again, your video might be 2 hours long. It might be, showcasing the 100 different hairstyles of your products, but then I will get the main benefit and the concept after the first one. And then because you are on the conference, well, not in the meeting room in the COVID times, but you're on the go, you very often consume videos on the mobile without sound off. And that's why subtitles are very handy. And that's why you should write whatever you want to say, but you should say it as well, because, some people obviously will say it. And then the size matters. Size matters, meaning that if you put it in the, if you put the video into traditional TV format, that will be simply so small on the screen. But if you would put it in the right format, it will be simply the bigger. And probably I don't need to convince you, the bigger advertising, the better, always. And then the last but not least, experimenting. And this is what I actually, try to convince you all across this deck and all across the speech, is about experimenting makes sense. And yes, you will fail, but probably I don't need to tell to entrepreneurs that, failing is good. But you can also sometimes explore something that is out of ordinary. And okay, I'm missing one slide here. I was hoping to show you my favorite Cats commercial, but then I will send it to the organizers later on. Apologies. And then it's all around the broad audiences. And, the long story short here is the reach matters. And the reach matters. And, with the digital, we failed into the trap that you want to target so narrowly that you forget that, the scale matters as well. And there's a very simple, idea about it, is that if you pay for the outcome, then it's simply cheaper and more effective to target broader, because then you can more easily, came up with that outcome. So like eventually deliver on your expectations. And then from that perspective, you will also pay less for that. So it's about going narrow, but it's not going over narrow. So it cannot be a yoga lover who, drives Mercedes and wakes up at 4 a.m. Every day. Yeah, because that's simply too narrow. And, from that perspective, it will simply cost you more and will be able not to reach effectively your desired target group. And this is actually the recommended test setup. I will not go through it. I will allow you to make a print screen right now. But it's all around, how you can effectively came up with some parts of it. Let's agree the following. I will send you this slide, and I will also send you a couple of links from our Facebook for Business websites where we actually talk a bit more about this one. And then, on the growth and the testing. So let's use the example here. So obviously you want to measure everything. It's not about, setting it up and then, believing it works. It's around, whatever is your success is our success from that perspective, and you trust our optimization. So then the question is, okay, you came up with that, you came up with that idea, you did this creative. So did the creative convert a new audiences? Yeah, because we focus on the new audiences here specifically, because if you're fine with the old ones, then it doesn't make sense to create new ones. And then, there's all around, experimenting, adjusting the campaign approach, and then the always on system on experimenting and learning, and also allowing our algorithm and machine learning to actually take out the best for you. So let's take the Mismar example. So this is actually the Nordics lingerie brand. Their issue was that they, even though they are for older women, for some reason they've been actually attracting, they were skewed in a way towards 45 plus years old women. And then they wanted to break it down because that was the audience that was actually flattening down. So that was actually, their business case here. And what we did is simply, again, as we talked, they experimented with a different creatives from that perspective. They put it online and they see what it worked. And as you can see in the numbers, and again, we all work in business, so the numbers matters, is that, they performed very differently. But there was one, the most strategic question they wanted to answer is that which of these creatives is actually attracting new users. And only the third one was. So even though it was the more expensive versus the base ones, they could actually enter the new territory, and that was still cost, from the cost perspective, that was still ROI positive for them, meaning that, they business-wise, they would actually go for it. And that's eventually where they started to explore more that third category and third concept going further. And here, another example, maybe not from so much DR or startup business, but I like the way how they actually split it out. So, McDonald's, we all know, is actually McDonald's Sweden, and the objective was to drive the app installs. So what they did at first is that they went into the different, creative concepts. So it was all around, business as usual. So they normally communicate around deals. It was around breakup makeup burger. It was around, the family, French fries lovers, and then the deal lovers. And again, they always compare. There was something new, so obviously they wanted to include this business as usual creative in a way to have some benchmark and to understand whether the new works better than the previous ones. And they started figuring out, okay, what seeing the result, what we can improve here, what we bet on. And what they discovered is that the first one is, the breakup and makeup was definitely out of the roof. So from that perspective, okay, let's explore that territory better. And then maybe the family one would perform better if they would use different colors, so that was a secondary thought on, how we can actually improve that one, and so on and so on. And again, the secondary iteration. So, okay, so they right now go, makeup, but the new business as usual, because makeup and breakup was so good that it actually became the new benchmark of the creatives. And then we've taken the original family creative, the new one, so the kind of more yellowish one. And we also figure out, for the French fries lovers, why not also experiment with the car lovers? And that was just, random thought, but we wanted to check it out. And then again, they put it online, they checked the results. And eventually, after a couple of reiterations, what they actually, came up with is that, that's obviously a few steps further, is that they want to explore further this, makeup and breakup possibilities, because that scored so well that they actually wanted to go deeper. The same as, remember our yoga discussions and kind of yoga lovers for the Uprights brand. But also, from that perspective, they want to go into the niche communities like gamers. And actually what we also discovered on the way and realized is also all around seasonality. So like eventually, having something like January survival kit and so on. And again, all of them communicating deals. And that actually allowed them to create yet new benchmark. So that became their benchmark looking further. And obviously it doesn't stop here because that's an always on exercise. But that's definitely, something that, I wanted to kind of showcase you that process so that eventually it's easier for you to imagine how that can work in real life. Apologies, I haven't played those. Okay, and then just to sum up, that eventually when it comes to this create for growth, approach, it's as simplistic as simply answering the question, did you convert a new different audience or not? If not, well, like let's talk again. If yes, then the question is if the cost was approachable for you. So yes, it might happen that sometimes the cost will be more expensive, sometimes less. But then the question is, whether it's the cost that, from your business model perspective, it still makes sense or not. If not, again, you have to come back to the, motivators and barriers. And that's eventually how this framework works. With that one, that's actually the end of, what I wanted to share. There's one last kind of short announcement from my side, which is all around what we are actually coming up with our local partners, but primarily also HTTP Pool as our biggest local partner, which is the Boost with Facebook. So we'll be actually organizing as Facebook the cycle of the digital workshops, actually targeting the smaller smaller startups or just new businesses. And that's actually something. Okay, apologies. I think I've opened the wrong deck, and that's why I'm missing some slides. But you can imagine that there was a Facebook event here. Apologies for this one. So from that perspective, I will also send you the link on the to the organizer to actually share with you on how you can actually enroll for that one. If anything, I'm always posting everything on my LinkedIn profile. So if you follow this one, you'll be able to follow all the events that you can join always. With that one, thank you so much, and I was thrilled to be here with you today.
Thank you so much, Katarzyna, for this. I would say one of the most practical, tangible.
I can't hear you for some reason.
Can you hear me now? Nope. Okay. So, can you hear me, Katarzyna? Okay. Well, let's assume that the audience is hearing this right now. I just wanted to say thank you for this really practical presentation. Nope, nothing?
No, I can hear. Sorry. Yes.
Boom.
Apologies. That's my fault. I've muted the videos. Apologies. I haven't realized.
Got it. Got it. Well, I just wanted to say, Katarzyna, thank you so much for this really practical presentation, one of the most practical and applicable presentation that I've seen, especially around this topic with so much actionable advice. I can't wait to actually watch it once again, after the conference, and just to get some of the ideas and put them into action. Amazing. Without any further ado, I just want to ask one question, and it's, where could people find you? If somebody has a question, wants to comment on the presentation, or want to get in touch for a potential partnership, where could people get in touch with you the best possible way?
Well, Messenger. So from that perspective, I'm at Facebook as well. I use more Facebook, LinkedIn for business though, but I think both channels are perfectly fine. So from that perspective, feel free to reach out to me there.
I love it. Of course, it's Messenger. What else could it be? So, Katarzyna, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for this session.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we are now wrapping up this session. There's a little break of 7 minutes before we continue here in Studio 3 with a really exciting session. We're going to deep dive and talk about flying robots. We're going to talk about drones. So go get a cup of coffee, get some water, and I'll see you again in 7 minutes.